All right, so let's talk biogeochemical cycles. Based on the name, you can tell what it is we're going to talk about. So we've got bio, life, geo, geology, rocks, earth, and chemical cycles. So these are the materials and the matter that's being recycled through our living and non-living, our abiotic and biotic components in our ecosystem. So the cycle is when they are converted and they change forms throughout our ecosystem. We've seen cycles before. We've seen in our food webs that energy is being transferred, also biomass. So this is one way that energy and matter flows through an ecosystem. And then there are larger processes, those biogeochemical cycles, that are on a broader scale than just on one single ecosystem. I wanted to zoom in on one part of our food web a little bit more just to clarify the difference between decomposers and detritivores. These are really important in our matter cycling in making all of that organic material into a new usable form for our biogeochemical cycles. So I wanted to clarify a little bit between detritus feeders and decomposers. Detritus feeders, based on the name, they are feeding. They have a mouth. They are eating. Whereas decomposers, they are chemically breaking things down. They don't have a mouth. They're not eating it. They're decomposing it. They're breaking it down. So in our ecosystems, we have our living things that are interacting with our biotic components are interacting with our abiotic components. So we know that an ecosystem is the interactions of abiotic and biotic factors. So in this, we have the combination of both energy and matter being cycled. So on these brown lines, you can see organic material that's going from one place to another. So for our plants, they get eaten by our consumers, or our detritus feeders, decomposers. Same thing with our consumers. After they die, they're eaten by these detritus feeders or broken down by our decomposers. In addition to their matter, their biomass moving, they also move energy through the ecosystem. So energy is also flowing from the sun to our plants, out from our living things into the heat loss. In addition to the energy and the biomass, we also have nutrients flowing through. So nutrients, we're going to talk more about like the phosphorus and nitrogen and the carbon, whereas the biomass is the more holistic view of it. So nutrients are also flowing back and forth between our abiotic and our biotic components of our ecosystem. So the first of the biogeochemical cycles we're going to talk about is our carbon cycle. Obviously, carbon's really important for life on Earth. We are mostly made of carbon. Carbon is the backbone of all living things. So carbon cycling is super important for our ecosystems, for life on Earth. And the carbon cycle is primarily based on CO2. When we talk about what's happening in our carbon cycle, we're looking at carbon dioxide primarily. Where is that carbon dioxide coming from? Where is it going? So we know that producers are removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere when they go through photosynthesis, when they perform that process. And then we know that we release CO2 during our cellular respiration. Obviously, producers also release CO2 through respiration, but they are doing a net removal of carbon dioxide from the environment, from the atmosphere. So some carbon takes a really long time to recycle. It can get stuck in these carbon sinks and just be sequestered there and stuck in that one part of the carbon cycle for a very, very long period of time. And then humans obviously have altered the carbon cycle significantly. We have changed the natural flow of things by burning fossil fuels and releasing a whole lot more carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere than is historically naturally normal. So on these diagrams, I want to point out a couple of things. These are going to be really helpful for understanding how the cycles work. So there's going to be one of these for each cycle. The blue lines are what is the natural pathway, what is normally going to happen in our cycle. And then the red lines are things that humans have done that influence the natural cycling of things. We also have processes and reservoirs. So this blue is a process. This is something that's happening that's changing our carbon from one form to another. And then the yellow are reservoirs. That's where carbon is staying for a certain period of time. So we call those carbon sinks a lot of the time. A carbon sink is something that will hold on to carbon for a very long time. All right, so let's start with our carbon dioxide moving from the atmosphere to the ocean. So carbon dioxide, it comes into a nice equilibrium with our ocean. It dissolves partially into the ocean, and then it gets used in marine food webs. Eventually, after those things die and sink down to the bottom, it will get stored in limestone or dolomite sediments. And then over time, we can also compact it, and it gets processed into carbon in fossil fuels. So carbon in fossil fuels is one that we're going to talk about a whole lot just throughout this entire unit and this entire course. But carbon in fossil fuels, obviously, we have taken it out of the ground. We have put it into our factories, into all of our things to power our world, and we burn them and add a significant amount of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So in addition to all of these natural processes that are happening that are contributing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, we are contributing a very large amount, which is why that arrow is so much thicker, to our atmosphere by burning our fossil fuels. As far as the natural components go, we also have our carbon dioxide being fixed by our plants. So through photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is fixed into plant biomass. From there, it can be consumed by animals. It can be consumed and turned into animal biomass, which then can die and get compacted and turn into fossil fuels again. We also see carbon that is in our consumers being respired through cellular respiration. We put off carbon dioxide, so that's going to be going back to the atmosphere as well. There are a couple of other human impacted carbon cycling components here. Transportation, as we burn those fossil fuels again, we're releasing some more of our carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Deforestation, when we cut down a tree, the organic matter in that tree is primarily made of carbon, right? So as that carbon breaks down, that tree is releasing its carbon dioxide as it is decomposed, as it breaks down. And then forest fires are both natural and human impacted. So we have impacted the scale of forest fires, we have impacted the frequency of forest fires, but it is a natural part of the carbon cycle as well. So it releases that carbon dioxide that was stored in the trees previously. All right, that is it for our carbon cycle. Next will be our nitrogen cycle.